Hello, listener, and welcome back to another episode of the Inspired Writer Collective. I'm so glad you're here with us today. This is Stephanie, and I'm here with our guest, Lindsay Rice, who is the author of Birdenwheel. And I am going to let Lindsay tell us a little bit about her book and what brought the inspiration.
Hi, Stephanie. Thanks for having
Uh,
me on your show. I appreciate it. My book, Birdenwheel, here's a cover with all my tabs in it. It is a braided narrative. It's a novel, and it's a braided narrative. And some of the setting is in the Grateful Dead scene of the 1990s. I was a Deadhead. I went on tour, and some of the settings are there. And also kind of in rural New Mexico and California and Kansas City. And it's just like these several characters that I created who have been with me for a very long time, and it's their stories and how they kind of overcome grief from different things that have happened in their lives. Um, but yeah, it's this is kind of my life's work so far. So I'm really happy to be here and talk about it.
So, what was the first spark for you that inspired you to want to write this story?
hmm Well, I've always been interested in creative writing. I did creative writing, from high school, edited the literary magazine in my high school, and then um, always was interested in poetry. And I went to the University of Iowa and studied creative
Mhm.
writing there. So writing has been kind of a big thing for me for a long time. And I was at a Jerry Garcia band show in Reno, Nevada. And I remember like I saw Jerry as like this white buffalo, and I had this kind of epiphany driving back up. I was living in Lake Tahoe and driving back up the mountain. I'm like, I'm going to write a book. I'm going to write a book about this. And that was kind of the first spark. But, my characters kind of developed later. But yeah, I never knew I was going to be writing a novel. I always thought I was going to be kind of a magazine writer and
Mhm.
poetry. But this kind of happened. So here it is.
So, when you had that idea, did you immediately start writing things down, or did it just kind of ruminate and
I think it ruminated for a very long time. I mean, this was some of the inspiration was when I was in my early 20s. So I'm now 50, and it took me a long time to develop these characters and to work on the plot and just putting it together. So I spent many years writing and going to workshops and developing the storyline. And um, it changed a lot. That's
yeah?
something kind of interesting to me.
Hmm.
It was a completely different novel at different points in time. Um, and so it wasn't until I kind of workshopped this at the University of Iowa to get it into its current form.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to, pieces of writing being at very different stages or completely scrapping a piece. Um, and how did your characters come to be? Were they inspiration? Did they kind of find you, or did you develop them to fit your narrative?
I'd say both. A lot of them have been pieced together from different people that I know and different relationships that I have. And I'd say that all of them are part of me too. I have part of myself I can see in each one of these characters. Some of them are a little bit more autobiographical than others, but they, one of the main characters, Devin, he's like a 50-year-old man who rides a motorcycle, and he was pieced together from my late stepbrother, mostly, who rode motorcycles and was kind of rough and tumble like that, but with a heart of gold. And then Cass, the younger character, kind of follows my story a little bit, but very different. Like her family history is different. And then Hetty, sometimes I think she comes from my great great grandmother, who I only knew in a picture. But when I think about her, I think about this picture of my great great grandmother. Um, So, it's funny how they come together and how everybody keeps asking me, well, is this you? Is this somebody else that you knew? And I'm like, well, maybe a little bit, kind of. But then I this other piece from a different person that I know. And so it's kind of formed from different people I know, different characteristics, different hobbies, different predilections that I just pick and choose, which I think is the most exciting thing about creating a character is that you can do that, you know?
Yeah, no, it is fun. Did you find when you were sitting down to write that it was almost like they were whispering over your shoulder, or did you feel like you already had a really set plan when you sat down to write their story?
I started writing them, and everything is each character has their own voice. So the chapters are separated by each character, and I wrote in that character's voice. And it was, I think it took a little bit of time to develop their voices. And I did some work on the side, like I wrote character sketches for each character
Mm,
and way more information about them than I used in my
hmm.
novel, but it had introduced me to them, and I learned how they would react to different situations, and what kinds of things were in their life that would maybe cause them to speak a certain way or to think a certain way. I think the backstory is really, really important. And when I wrote these characters, I picked from different things in their past that then would make them act a certain way in the present when I was writing them.
So did you keep notebooks for each character? Like, did you keep, Google Doc, like what was your medium for keeping track of all of the information about them?
Yeah, it's a lot. I did several different things. I think, and I think back like the character sketches were like I had a file for each one and I would write them. I would do that as a writing practice. Okay, today I'm going to write Devin and just everything I can think of about him and what he, loves, what he likes, dislikes, what his clothes are, what he looks like, all the things. And so keeping it in a file on my computer. And then when I was piecing the book together, I used Scrivener.
Hmm.
They have a nice board that you can have these tiles, and so I gave them different colors for each character. So that helped me see, okay, there's this many chapters of Devon, this many chapters of Rowan, this many chapters of Cass, this many chapters of Hetty, and this many chapters of Percy. Those are my main characters, but it wasn't even. I didn't say because I some of them the story was more told through their perspective than others.
Yeah, Scrivener is a great program. I really like that for myself as well because I like to be able to see everything organized and not have to scroll through a lengthy document and have everything very accessible. So I definitely agree with you that it's a great way to help organize your thinking and especially seeing where your characters are and where maybe you need to fill in spaces.
And it's tough. It's not like writing from one character's perspective. And I don't know why, as my first novel, I chose to do something as complicated as this, but it just that's how it happened. And as I got to know these characters, I just, I started to love them and feel for them, and want to tell their stories. So, um, I did different things. Like in my novel, I at the beginning I had chapters and I had like a title for the chapter. And I noticed that I ended up having some that had the titles and some that didn't. And I decided just to have the chapter number and their name. So I think that makes it a little bit clearer for the reader. However, I I decided to do these. The person who helped me with publishing, she calls them Easter eggs. So within this, there are a few chapters that have like a little line up here, and this is my poetic self creating something that mimics a lyric. So the
Wonderful.
Grateful Dead music and the scene are prominent in my novel. However, when I was in workshops, everybody said, don't put lyrics in your writing. A publisher or an editor will not allow that. It's too expensive. So I'm like, okay. how am I going to do this? How am I going to capture the essence of a song that reminded me of the scene or was something having to do with the character? How am I going to get that into my novel without having to pay for it or use somebody else's lyrics?
Hmm.
I I made poetry. So one of them is the circle is moving and it's coming back around. It's hard to know the when, but the why is always found. And that, I don't know if Grateful Dead fans can read that and think, okay, is this a particular song? And yes, it's The Wheel, which
Wheel,
is
yeah,
part of the time.
that's what I was gonna that was gonna be my guess. I mean, I'm not an
Okay.
expert, but yeah, yeah.
Well, good. That's what I wanted is for you to be like, oh, that sounds a little bit like. And I spent a long time on these, and I would take the lyrics and I would count out the syllables so that I could get the rhythm, but not use the same words and do something similar. So a little bit
Oh,
of
I
paraphrase.
love that. I love that. I think that that would be such a cool like writing exercise for like taking any lyrics that you love and trying to, mimic, like you said, the syllables and get and using different words. I think that that's really creative. I love that for how you chose to integrate that.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, I would have done more, but it gets to the point where I'm like, okay, this has to go out in the world. And I
Right.
could spend many more years working just on that aspect. But I'm really pleased with that part of it. And I think it creates a little bit of a nod to to Robert Hunter and the lyricists for the
Hmm.
Dead music, who I love, without having to use their words and plagiarize or have to pay for them.
Yeah.
There's one lyric that is in my dedication, and that is, "If I knew the way, I would take you home." And that's from Ripple, and I
Yeah.
wrote Robert Hunter's name next to it, and it's dedicated to him. The book is dedicated to Jared Garcia, Robert Hunter, Phil Lesh, the great ones that we lost. Um,
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, Ripple is my favorite song, so I definitely appreciate that. And like you said, I love the way you wove poetry into it and into the stories. And so, I mean, with the time frame that it took you to write the book, how many drafts did you go through? Because we've been talking a lot about drafts and stuff ourselves and how many different rounds we've come back and reworked a piece of writing.
I mean, first off, I want to say like boxes, boxes of writing, and because I used to print them out and then look at them. And the story changed so much for different reasons. Like it wasn't it wasn't appropriate for me to have certain things in, so I had to change it. So many drafts. And, this was, as I said, it was in my 20s. So it took me forever to write this. But it was more like I was writing different parts of it and I was doing different things with it. So at one point at the University of Iowa, I did an honors thesis and I flash fictioned some of my writing so that I could learn how to get to the action quicker because
Mm,
I have a tendency to write very long-winded. It's a literary novel,
yeah.
and I like to sit with my characters. I like to muse with them, and that doesn't necessarily make for a good action-filled book. I think there is something to that, to the literary tradition, and I that's
Hmm.
where I was writing, but I needed to get to the action quicker. So I say flash because I was really interested in flash fiction and writing short pieces, like 1,000
Yeah.
words. And so I created a smaller version of this, and it's called In the Shadow of the Raven Star. And I ended
Mm,
up binding this as part of my honors thesis. So, you know, working on different parts of it at different times, I think was really helpful because it made me realize, okay, you have this writing, you have this, like you have a character sketch, but that doesn't go in the novel, you know? And I always tell students, because I'm a tutor too, that you might write 12 pages and you might use 9 of them, which is
hmm.
normal, I think.
Yeah.
So that comes through the drafts and things
Yeah.
getting
No,
done.
I definitely wish that in, the schooling years that it was normalized that you go through, multiple iterations of a piece of writing, that it's normal to start one place and then you end up scrapping. I think in our age of so much information, there's this thought that, oh, it just happens so fast, and it doesn't happen fast with, with the writing process. And so you mentioned at the beginning that it's a braided narrative, and I'm interested in just hearing a little bit more about how you came to decide on that particular approach.
I think I started out writing from like the one character's perspective, Cass, and it was mainly her story to begin with, but at some point it didn't feel like it encompassed the whole, picture and the whole scene that I wanted to relay. And then, through various workshops, it was like, which character changes the most? Which is the
Mm.
character that goes through the biggest change? And that it emerged that Devon was the one who goes through the biggest change. So this is historical fiction, but it's also magical realism. So one of my characters transforms to a raven, and has, that interest to um, leave his body and become something else, whatever that is a metaphor for.
Hmm.
And so his transformation was greater than Cass, who just, was a high school student and came into the dead scene. And so he became more of the main character. However, when some people like my writing teachers have read this book, they're like, "Oh, Cass is the main character." They it doesn't it depends on your preference or who you look at or
Hmm.
connect with. Another friend of mine, Candace, who read this, she really connected with Hetty because of something that happened to Hetty in the story, and she could relate to something that happened in her life too. And I think that's the beauty of having multiple characters, is that different people can relate to them. I remember reading George Amato. He's a South American magic.
Hmm.
He writes magical realism, and some of his characters were like in the army, and the others were like mermaids or connected with deities. And I was like, I like those characters. So anytime I read those chapters, I was like, this is my jam. But
Hmm.
then I went through the other ones just to get through it, and I knew that other people would connect with those other characters. So um sorry, I lost your question.
No, I was just asking about the braided narrative, about how you came to decide. I just think that it's just an interesting way to have, brought the people together. But then I think too, what it makes me think about, especially with respect to the Grateful Dead, is the way their music brings so many different types of people together across all, ages, background, and there is a certain element of the magical realism in some of the way they present things, and especially more currently with their shows with all the graphics. There's all
Hmm.
kinds of
Hmm.
different ideas. So I think that that's kind of cool too. That's how I'm connecting a little bit of your process.
Yeah, yeah. In the songs, I mean, to me, Terrapin Station might be my greatest love song, but someone else might be like, ah, I hate that song. Or someone might be really into Drums in Space, and I'm like, I'm going to the bathroom during the show. So it really depends on each person. I was thinking about that today. I was listening to Bear's Choice. It's an old album, The History of the Grateful Dead. And
Okay.
I was thinking about how I love the studio albums because they're succinct, they're easy to understand, they're bites of information, and I'm not really into the whole space going off on tangents. The could sometimes be 15 minutes, and
Hmm.
thinking, gee, if I were a guitar player, I would probably love that because I would be like, oh, I bet they're doing this and doing that, but that's not my jam. So
Hmm.
yeah, look, like not being able to decide on each character or who is taking the wheel, but wanting to have them all be part of it, like a Grateful Dead scene was an amalgamation of all these people from all over, and the songs. Um, are loved by different people. So yeah, I mean, it's the same thing with, I don't know if if you were in the Dead scene and went to shows, but some people love to be on Jerry's side. Some people wanted to be way up in the Phil zone because they love Phil Lesh. So it was the same thing, whatever you like. And, but wanting to, that's where the circle kind of comes from, is that wanting to realize that we're all making this together. And
Hmm.
it's each part. So each one of my characters makes the story go around.
Yeah, no, it's wonderful. So how did you come to decide about publishing, and what was that process like for you?
I could have spent another 20 years working on this book. Like I said, I could have just focused on those little lyric bits and
Hmm.
poetry bits and just doing it forever. But I got to the point where I'm like, I need to get this off my plate. I need to do other things. And my life is, I live in Colorado, as you
Yeah.
do, and I'm very busy and active with Colorado things. And I'm hunter and a fisherman, and I have a garden and I have chickens, and all of that has taken over my life to the point where, like, oh, I can't get enough time into my writing. And I was thinking about this earlier too, that the way that I've done my writing process has been, like, sometimes I went to the University of Iowa, I worked on it there, and I've created different circumstances in my life where I focused just on this writing.
Mm-hmm.
So I lived in northern New Mexico in a cabin in the winter by myself for, 4 to 6 months. I would go into Santa Fe and work for like 10 days or something, and then I'd go tuck away and I would work
Yeah.
on it there. So the isolation that was required for me to write this book was not totally practical in the rest of my life. So I'm not. I know some people like can have a bunch of kids and they write from like 4 to 4:30 in the morning in their closet. That's not me. Um,
Yeah.
I'm kind of like a dog who has to go around in a circle many times until they sit down. So
Yes.
having the isolation was really important to me to get this out. But yeah, there's too many other things I want to do, and there's other writing that I feel like I can do too. Um, in other work. So it was just time to get it off my plate in that regard. And I sent out, I think, about 60 query letters to agents to try to get an agent and to try to do it that way. And I was really stuck on, no, I want to traditionally publish this. I want this
Hmm.
really to get out in the world. I was really stuck on that. Um, and I shared this with a woman who's a publisher here in town, and she was like, you just need to self-publish this. That's what you need to do because that's where publishing is kind of going, unless you are really lucky and you get
Yeah.
something and you have it. So I did a lot of workshops, and there was a couple of them where I got to meet an agent in person and like over the computer screen for 10
Yeah.
minutes like a pitch. And
Yeah.
I had two that were interested, but they were like, if you're going to do this, it needs to be 90,000 words and you have to cut out all the magical realism, and then a different one would be like, oh, I like this and you'll have to do that. And I was like, that's not what I want. That's not
Yeah.
what I want for this book. So I finally was like, okay, I'm just going to do this and I'm just going to publish it and I'm going to get it off my plate and then I'm going to get it out in the world and then we'll let it have a life, you know? So that's why I decided to do that. And I think the way that I did it, I'm pretty proud of it. I did get some help with formatting everything. Um, so that was really helpful. I edited the entire novel. Like I got it into print. So I worked with a woman, Jane Friedman. I don't know if you know her.
Yes, I'm
She's
familiar with her work. Yeah.
Yeah, she's fantastic. And she
Yeah.
helped me with my query letter and with my synopsis. So I had that really well done. Um, and she was like, well, go to Snowfall Press. I think that's the name of it. And you can get it printed without publishing it. So I just needed to get it into this form so that
Yeah.
I could then start working on it. I mean, Scrivener was great, but that's all on my
Hmm.
computer, and the boxes
Yes.
of drafts were hard to keep track of. So I finally was like, okay, I put it into print without publishing it and did that first. And I edited it that way. I shared it with my mom, and a few other people and got some feedback. And then I took that feedback and I integrated it. I had one friend who was like, there's a lot of characters, I can't keep track of them. So I added this graphic in here of all the characters so people could keep track of them. That was
Oh,
a great
wonderful.
helpful piece before I published it. And then I did it through Ingram Spark. So I don't know if you're familiar with Ingram, if you use them.
I am familiar with. I haven't used them myself, but I know several writers who have used them and have been very pleased with their experience.
Yeah, so I started with that, and that way I can send it now to bookstores, and bookstores
Hmm.
can order it directly from Ingram. I did that first, and it auto-populated to Amazon, which was really nice. And then I did the ebook on Amazon because
Okay, yeah.
you don't really want to do it the other way around, as I was told, because then it's just stuck in Amazon and you can't
Hmm.
do
Hmm.
things. So going through Ingram, I think was really valuable, and I feel like I can do things with it now. The thing about publishing myself is that I don't have a big publishing house to back me and to support me. I'm doing everything pretty much myself. But, even if I did go through a publishing house, they would say, okay, what's your marketing plan? What are you doing? And maybe we'll support you with that, but we're also going to take a big cut of it. And I was like,
Hmm.
this doesn't sound really good. I know how to market myself to some degree. I've had businesses.
Yeah.
And so I've done all of it myself. I have a website, I have I was really into the Goodreads page. That I think is a really important tool for publishing, because anybody can write a review. You don't have to buy it through Amazon to write a review on Amazon. I mean, sorry, to write a review on Goodreads. You can write it on Amazon if you buy it from Amazon, but Goodreads, you can have bought the book anywhere.
You've given so many great insights into the process, and I wasn't familiar. I mean, I'm familiar with Goodreads, but I wasn't familiar with how, instrumental it can be, especially as a self-published author, to get the reviews and get people aware of the book.
Hmm.
So now, once you had the book in hand, what was your first step in marketing, or how did you come up with your strategy for, getting the book into hands of your readers?
Well, once I mean, I tried to give some of the old versions to a couple people to get the word out. And, this is
Hmm.
kind of a particular thing because of the Grateful Dead and how popular they are and how many people love them. And I mean, I don't feel like it's even scratched the surface yet, honestly. Um, but what did I start with? I had a party. I had a book launch party. I had a fantastic, I mean, you were there,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. It was fantastic. Yeah, it was a
Um,
great way.
yeah, so I mean, I worked as hard as I could to have this party. I have a friend who has a club here, and she was like, okay, yeah, we can do that. And that sounds good. And then I got a local Grateful Dead cover band to be part of it.
Hmm.
They played. I got a videographer and a photographer. That was like one of the things that I paid for. I'm still paying for it, but he was fantastic, and he got a lot of coverage, and he got a lot of videos, and that's stuff that I can use now. I've used some of it in my marketing, but I have a lot more that I can still use. Um, so creating the book, I did bookmarks so that I could put my QR code to my website and to my Goodreads page to try to get more people to review it. I sent out press releases to the local newspaper and to the local radio stations. I went in there and I said, I'm having a party, please come and please tell everybody. And people were fantastic in this small mountain town and said, yeah, hey, come on the
Yeah,
radio. So I got 2 radio interviews. I got an article in the newspaper. I had my website up, and I had this party. And we had grilled cheese sandwiches. We had Grateful Dead music. I had 2 artists come and set up their art so they could sell there. But yeah, I had a party, like a book launch party, and I had 6 friends from high school come into town to enjoy the time with me. So that was really special, and I had them all do interviews. They read the book, and yeah, that was kind of my big thing. I'd love to do more of that, but
Hmm.
that was in May. You know, I published on May 5th, 2025, because I thought 5/5/25 is cool. Um,
Yeah.
and then and then I learned, and believe it or not, I learned this after that that was the date 60 years ago when the Grateful Dead had their first show at Magoo's Pizza Parlor in Menlo Park, California. I'm like,
Oh, wow.
how did I get that right? So, and
Wow.
aligning on 2025, this is the 60-year anniversary
Hmm.
of the Grateful Dead. And so somehow this book had to wait for that.
That's amazing. I love this. I love the synchronicity of that, where you find things and don't really know that that's happening until it's
Mhm.
happened, and then all those cool things. And like you said, like the book just had to wait for its time, and here is that time. And I
Yeah.
agree with you. I think, there's so much around, Deadheads and those who follow the Grateful Dead that you haven't quite scratched the surface yet of, what's possible to, bring your story to more people.
I mean, I'd love to get it into the hands of some of my heroes and some of
Hmm.
the people who love the Dead. I've given one to the new iteration of Jerry Garcia Band, the keyboardist Melvin. Anyway, yeah, so I think that my character, I kind of attribute this waiting for the right moment to my characters. And what's really neat is I'm starting to see them. Like at the launch party, I was like, oh, that guy looks like Percy. Oh, here's an example of Devin's daughter. And it was just like so neat to me to experience my characters once they were out into the world and to see them reflecting in people. I went to Vail recently and saw Dark Star Orchestra. Um,
Hmm.
and when I was listening to the songs, some of the songs stood out to me of like, oh, this is so and so's song. This is the song that Roan really loves and that he would really appreciate. So I started listening to the music through them. Um, which makes me think, oh, I could have spent a lot more time on this novel, and really develop them. But I'm like, no, no. I think I want to write other things in my life, and but this is pretty much my baby, and
Yeah.
I'm happy that it's in the world. I'm happy that it's getting the good reception that it is. And the whole idea, sometimes writers think, I've got to get this time. I've got to do this within this time, and this is the time for it. Um, and I was told by my publisher helper that a book is new to anybody who it's new to. Anybody who hasn't read it, it's new to them.
Hmm.
And I was like, oh, wow, you're right. I'm reading a book from 1940s, right now, and it's new to me. And
Hmm.
so everything in it is still preserved. And I think that's the beauty of books and novels, especially, is that they can live in different time periods. Um, and some of my characters, a lot of them are in the 1990s, but one of my characters is from the 1880s, and he kind of pops in, and it's his story too. So, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I love that idea about a book is new to whoever is picking it up for the first time, and that's a great way to think about it. Because I do think often some writers do feel that pressure, like, oh, the time is going to pass, and the story I want to tell is not going to be relevant. When in fact, it's always relevant if it's the story that you're meant to tell.
Yeah.
And so I love that. So closing up here, if one of the things we're doing this season is asking if there's one piece of advice you would give to a new emerging writer, what would you tell them?
Keep writing, keep writing, keep writing, keep writing. Um, don't edit yourself yet. And yeah, I mean, I think writing is a practice. And however it works for you, whether it is isolating yourself or it's doing it, every single day in a journal, just develop your own practice of writing and be in a community too. I've also had a lot of writing dates with people. I had writing partners over the years where we would just meet and we would either write first for 10, 15 minutes and then check in, and then we do it again. And that can be done over text too, whatever. Okay, you ready? Let's go.
Yeah,
Just getting, sometimes when you create the container, it allows you to get something written in. Yeah.
I love that. Well, this has been such a fun conversation, Lindsay. It's been so lovely to have you. So yeah, so wishing you all the best as you continue with your writing, and
Thank you.
thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. Bye bye.